It began as so many grand interstellar incidents do, with a single meeting, a solemn gathering of the Council of Allied Worlds in a lofty, circular chamber lined with flickering hollow lanterns. Representatives of numerous star systems were assembled in a ring of seats that hovered a few centimeters off the polished black floor. Their assorted shapes, some insectoid, some cephalopod-like, others vaguely reptilian, appeared tense. And at the center of them all stood Commander Vixer of the Thrall Dominion, a tall, cephalopodic being whose tentacles quivered with impatience. He had come here determined to present a final argument about the troublesome species known as humans. This time, he insisted they had gone too far. Rumors had circulated for years about Earth. The Council, always wary, had tried to keep diplomatic relations afloat, but the humans were unpredictable. They had once turned a formal trade negotiation into a chilly cook-off and nearly poisoned an entire alien delegation with toxic levels of capsaicin. Another time, a human delegate had not only refused the Council's official invitation to embrace the galaxy's revered gelatin-based cuisine, but had publicly declared it the ugliest Jell-O mold in existence and fled the banquet hall. There had also been that bizarre fiasco involving a universal debt policy. The humans had taken offense to the idea of owing credits to an interstellar bank they'd never heard of, and the debate had degenerated into a drinking contest. Somehow, Earth's ambassador won handily, leaving the entire Council deeply embarrassed. And so, the Council had come to resent Earth's constant capacity for chaos. Vixer cleared his throat, or rather made a wet, gurgling sound that served as his species equivalent. His eyes, set in a ridged, squid-like face, glistened with stern resolve. He addressed the gathered representatives, tentacles gesturing sharply. Council members, once again, we face the problem of humanity. But this time, it is not about their refusal to abide by etiquette. It is not about their mocking of our gastronomic traditions. It is about an undeniable act of war. The chamber erupted in a chorus of murmurs. A representative from the Yilax species let out a squeal, and someone in the back fumbled with a data slate that clattered to the floor. Vixer demanded silence. We of the Thrall Dominion dispatched an envoy to Earth to discuss trade regulations. Our envoy was offered a dish by the humans, something they called a mystery sandwich. They fed it to him without clarifying the contents. He paused, exhaling in frustration. Our envoy was so enthralled by its flavor that he has refused all other forms of nourishment. According to the best Thrall physicians, the only cure for his affliction is to consume more of that sandwich. In short, humanity has weaponized their food against us. The Council gasped, though a few members looked uncertain. One squeaked, "But is that truly an act of war?" Vixer slammed down a writhing tentacle. "It most certainly is." When pressed for details on what this mystery sandwich contained, the humans merely laughed and said, "You really don't want to know, mate." This was open mockery. They have no respect for the cosmic order. I have had enough. His tentacles trembled with righteous indignation. On behalf of the Thrall Dominion, I propose a direct intervention. Earth must be subdued before they spread these barbaric customs and these cunning acts of culinary sabotage any further. Heads bobbed in agreement across the chamber. The Yilax representative whispered, "I recall the humans once forced my delegation to sample their hot sauce. We lost 2 envoys to extreme spice intolerance." Another, representing a proud reptilian race, hissed, "We discovered that humans sometimes greet each other by slapping hands and exclaiming random phrases. Our people were mortified to be slapped without prior formalities." All around, ambassadors recounted their humiliating or baffling run-ins with humans. When the clamor died down, the majority favored Vixer's plan. They delivered a nearly unanimous vote to invade Earth and put an end to its disruptive ways. Few noticed a quiet figure in the back who half rose, as though to protest, then settled again in silence. Her gaze flickered between the boisterous council members. She alone suspected that a direct assault on Earth might not go as planned. But her warnings, she knew, would fall on deaf ears. The council had decided. Humanity had become too much of a threat to interstellar peace, or at least to interstellar dignity. A fleet would depart at once, bearing the most advanced weaponry the galaxy had to offer. In a matter of days, word reached Earth. A colossal armada had dropped out of FDL in the outer solar system. Satellite images showed metallic warships, each the size of a small city, bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields. Broadcasts were sent. Some were polite demands for surrender. Some were less polite. The collective response from Earth was mixed. Pockets of fear existed, of course, as governments scrambled to figure out how to address an imminent alien invasion. But in certain corners of the world, a different reaction took hold. In the scenic highlands of Scotland, news of the alien approach was greeted with a surprising mixture of curiosity and excitement. Old jokes about if aliens land in Glasgow, they'll regret it began to resurface online, and local chatter turned to gallows humor. Townsfolk traded stories over pub counters. Some prepared to evacuate while others prepared differently. A self-organized group of rugged, kilt-wearing enthusiasts, many of them with Gaelic ancestry and a fierce sense of tradition, decided they would be ready. If the aliens landed in the Highlands, they would discover, to their regret, the spirit of the Highlanders. A lightly televised press briefing made the situation clear. Earth's militaries did not expect to repel a cosmic armada with conventional forces. While joint operations formed a plan of defense around major cities, certain more remote areas, like the Highlands, could not be fully fortified in time. The local volunteers were told, hold out as long as you can. Nobody had illusions of winning a stand-up fight against interstellar troops. Yet among these Scots, there was no despair. They gathered casks of whiskey. They sharpened claymore swords handed down through generations. They teased each other with an almost reckless humor, saying things like, if the big squids come looking for trouble, we'll show them how we greet unwelcome guests, with a dram in one hand and a stick in the other. Government officials who caught wind of these Highland defenders were, on one hand, worried about potential chaos. On the other, they found themselves oddly reassured that at least someone was confronting the situation with a sense of boldness. Military command suspected that the Highlands, being sparsely populated, were a likely landing point for alien forces wanting an easy foothold. No one truly believed a band of kilt-wearing, bagpipe-playing enthusiasts would hold their own against advanced plasma weaponry. But no one knew how else to protect that region. Meanwhile, the rest of Earth's armies scrambled to fortify major population centers, hoping for the best. Communications between the Thrall Dominion's flagship and Earth's leaders went poorly. Vixer demanded unconditional surrender. Earth, in a somewhat unified statement, declared that it would resist to the last. In a comically misdelivered broadcast, a minor official offhandedly mentioned, if they want to fight, send them to the Highlands first. We'll see how they fare. This snippet reached Vixer's tentacled ears. He had never heard of the Highlands, so he scanned the planetary data archives. All he found were references to mountainous terrain, an allegedly fierce local culture, and pictures of men in checkered skirts brandishing archaic swords. The images incensed him with a sense of contempt. This will be easy, he declared. We'll show these archaic barbarians why the Thrall Dominion has reigned supreme in the fifth sector for centuries. His fleet soared into low Earth orbit. Thousands of advanced battle drones, mechanized walkers, and shock troops stood ready. Vixer believed that if they crushed the Highlands quickly, they would send a message to the rest of Earth to capitulate. So the primary landing force descended on a misty, rugged expanse in Scotland, the slopes covered in heather and dotted with ancient castles and old stone walls. They set down with flaring energy drives, flattening patches of grass with the heat of their thrusters. The invasion began with an almost theatrical confidence. Over loudspeakers in heavily accented Galactic common, the Thrall Dominion declared, lay down your primitive arms. Surrender your territory immediately. The Dominion does not wish to cause unnecessary harm. But harm was definitely on the horizon. A small line of Highlanders had assembled. They were outnumbered and outgunned by a factor of at least 1,000. Nonetheless, they stood unwavering. The first sign of trouble came when, instead of cowering or scattering, the Scots started playing bagpipes. The drones, picking up the wailing notes, concluded they were under some form of sonic attack. Automated protocols kicked in, leading them to jam up briefly in an effort to recalibrate. In that brief pause, an older Scotsman wearing a battered kilt and sporting an unruly beard hollered, "Well, lads, let's give them a proper welcome." And they charged downhill. At first, the Thrall shock troops tried to follow standard procedure. They fired plasma bolts, expecting the defenders to flee or be vaporized. But the Highlanders, driven by adrenaline and a fair bit of whiskey in their veins, proved unpredictably fast and strangely elusive. One man tripped on a rock and accidentally barrel-rolled into a squad of Thrall soldiers, toppling them over. Another, a woman with a swirl of war paint on her cheeks, lifted a claymore nearly as tall as she was and let out a wild, half-laughing battle cry that sent a wave of confusion through the alien ranks. This did not look like standard human military discipline at all. In orbit, Vixer watched with confusion as the first data feeds arrived. Drone cameras showed these humans laughing. Despite the lethal blasts flying around, they appeared to be having an almost exuberant experience. A young Scotsman swung an ancient sword directly at a Thrall trooper's energy rifle, sparks flying, and then wrested it away. Another group of defenders tackled a mechanized walker by surprising its pilot with raucous bagpipe music blasted through a homemade speaker. The walker's sensors went haywire, its AI shutting down out of sheer confusion at the bizarre frequencies. The pilot ejected, only to be greeted with a hearty swig of whiskey pressed upon him by the same Highlanders who had attacked. He staggered back, tentacles twitching in confusion, and was promptly declared an honorary Scot for the day. Within 15 minutes, Vixer's meticulously planned insertion force was experiencing unprecedented chaos. Some squads had retreated. Others had somehow joined the Scots in drunken celebrations around small campfires that had spontaneously sprung up when a plasma bolt ignited a thatch of dry brush. The mission logs read, "Hostiles are employing unorthodox methods. Morale is compromised. Multiple troopers have begun singing." Furious, Vixer ordered a second wave. He commanded that the new units refrain from any form of social engagement and use direct lethal force if necessary. More dropships landed, releasing squads of heavily armored Thrall shock troops, each armed with advanced scanning helmets to block out the bagpipe frequencies. But the Highlanders simply switched strategies. Some raced forward brandishing what looked like wooden shields painted with Celtic motifs. Others stood on a distant rise, hoisting a massive homemade catapult that flung barrels full of some pungent liquid. When the barrels struck the ground, they burst open, drenching the area in a potent brew of malt and who knows what. The Thrall troopers were baffled by the smell, and to their dismay, their suits began to clog with sticky residue. In the confusion, a squad of Scots charged down from behind. Instead of precise maneuvers, they offered pure spontaneity, tumbling, shouting jokes, whacking the Thrall troopers over their helmeted heads with hurling sticks. Drone footage revealed bizarre wrestling matches as one Scotsman tackled an alien into a gorse bush, only to help him out, dust him off, and insist he take a sip of whiskey. It defied all standard logic of warfare. The troopers who tried to remain stoic were quickly singled out by their own more easily swayed comrades, some of whom had begun chanting Gaelic nonsense, dragging everyone else into their spontaneous merrymaking. Reports streamed back to the orbiting flagship. One Thrall officer pleaded over the comm, "We cannot establish a front line. They move haphazardly. They take hits and just keep going. And we are losing soldiers to forced camaraderie." Another spoke of encountering a barbaric beverage that causes extreme euphoria. Vixer slammed a tentacle against the command console. "Impossible. We're the greatest military might in the 5th sector. Wipe them out, or take them captive. Do whatever you must to subdue them." He initiated an orbital bombardment sequence, commanding the flagship's AI to pinpoint the densest clusters of human resistance. As the massive cannons prepared to fire, an alarm shrieked on the bridge. The AI recognized an auditory anomaly. The bagpipes again, or some equally outlandish variant. Interference signals spiked. The system attempted to compensate by shutting down external targeting arrays for a reboot cycle, which meant that for precisely 30 seconds, the flagship's main weapons went offline. During that window, the humans on the ground swept through more alien landing pods, either driving them away or capturing them in a swirl of confusion and comedic brawls. By the time the cannons cycled back on, the ground situation had changed too much for a clear shot. Enraged, Vixer consulted his top generals, who looked frazzled. Many had received disturbing updates from the surface. Some entire battalions had effectively lost discipline, refusing to fight. Others had defected on the spot, claiming that Earth's hospitality was bizarrely appealing. Like an unstoppable wave of chaotic kindness and hearty violence wrapped in a single cultural phenomenon. Vixer could scarcely believe what he was hearing. He flew into a rage, boarded a dropship, and demanded to be taken to the surface so he could personally restore order. The dropship rattled through Earth's atmosphere, heading for the same highlands that had already consumed so many proud Thrall squadrons. When Vixer stepped onto the damp grass, flanked by his personal guard, he was immediately greeted by the smell of smoke, the distant sound of laughter, and the unmistakable tang of alcohol in the air. The sky was gray, a light drizzle falling, typical Scottish weather, though Vixer didn't know that. He advanced across muddy terrain, trying to keep his composure as his tentacles twitched with indignation. Moments later, he discovered a group of his own troopers swaying unsteadily around a half-ruined stone wall. They had lost their helmets and were singing alongside a handful of Scots. A tall man in a kilt was playing a set of bagpipes. Another was distributing cups of whiskey as though it were a universal cure-all. The troopers, of course, had never tasted anything so potent. Most were giggling hysterically, their eyes wide. Vixer snapped. "What do you think you're doing? You're soldiers of the Dominion, not street performers." One of the troopers stumbled forward, saluting in a sloppy manner. "Apologies, Commander," he stammered, "but they insisted we share a drink. And if you refuse, they get offended. Then they challenge you to a head-butting contest. We lost 3 troopers that way. Actually, they didn't die, they just collapsed from head trauma. Then these humans revived them and offered more drinks. It's madness." A firm hand clapped Vixer's shoulder from behind. He whirled around to see a broad-shouldered Highlander, face painted with swirling blue lines, eyes alight with mischief. "Huh, another big squid has come to play. Here, have a cup and lighten up, lad. We haven't got all day to mope about." Stunned, Vixer tore himself free. "How dare you lay a hand on me? I am Commander Vixer, High Captain of the Thrall Dominion." The Highlander beamed. "That's nice. I'm Ian MacDunn. Pleased to meet ye. Now are you sure you won't have a wee dram?" He thrust a wooden cup brimming with amber liquid under Vixer's nose. Vixer tried to remain composed, but the swirling smell was at once sweet and burning. He recognized it as the same brew that had evidently ensnared his troops. He jerked his tentacles away, barking, "No, absolutely not." Ian MacDunn merely winked, saying, "Suit yourself. We'll be over by the fire if you change your mind." Then, with the casual air of someone who had known Vixer for years, he patted the commander on the arm and joined a knot of singing Scots who seemed to be simultaneously dancing and wrestling for fun. Growling with frustration, Vixer marched off in search of some semblance of a front line. Instead, he encountered more pockets of partying. Within the next hour, he watched as a group of Scots coerced 2 Thrall soldiers into exchanging armor for kilts, brandishing battered claymores. The aliens slurred half-formed Gaelic phrases they had picked up, brandishing their new swords proudly while the Scots roared with laughter. No matter how many times Vixer tried to rally his men, the entire environment felt saturated with unpredictability. Then, in one field of churned mud and half-trampled heather, a more serious clash erupted. A fresh Thrall detachment had landed, untainted by the whiskey epidemic, and they opened fire on the band of Scots who were trying to greet them. Plasma bolts streaked across the gray sky. Two Highlanders took minor hits, but instead of going down, they roared defiance. One raised a battered shield and dashed headlong at the alien troopers, a war cry on his lips. Bagpipes screeched from a nearby hillside. A small quartet of Scots in full regalia played an upbeat tune that sounded bizarrely triumphant. The new thrall squad froze for a moment, scanning for a threat they could not quite pinpoint. That tiny hesitation allowed the bold shield-bearer to crash into them. The line collapsed. Another Scotsman tackled an alien trooper, wrestled the plasma rifle away, and promptly flung it aside because, as he later shouted, "It's no proper if it's not a fair fight." A female soldier among the thrall, stunned by the sheer absurdity, tried to radio Vixer for help. Before she could do so, a canny Scotswoman had grabbed her by the arm, twisted her around, and asked with genuine curiosity, "Hey, love, ever tried a single malt that tastes like the inside of a smoky chimney?" Then she forced a flask against the soldier's lips. Next report from that alien soldier's vantage cam showed her staggering about, muttering, That is surprisingly oh my," while the Scotswoman patted her on the back. Moments later, the entire skirmish devolved into a massive muddle of half-laughing, half-groaning combatants sliding through the mud. Word spread rapidly. The invasion had bogged down, not because humans had superior weaponry, but because they used a baffling mix of rowdy aggression, relentless partying, and lethal hospitality. The carefully planned strategies of the Thrall Dominion fell apart in real time. Vixer could not believe it. He called for a more ruthless approach. The capital ships in orbit were to obliterate the Highlands entirely. Yet again, bagpipe frequencies and swirling weather patterns caused sensor malfunctions. The ship's computers repeatedly flagged the terrain as unstable target zones. Meanwhile, the fiasco on the ground was making it nearly impossible to secure proper coordinates. At one point, a wave of jamming signals emanated from a local radio tower that had been commandeered by a bagpipe band, hooking their instruments into the microphone system. The blasts of that strange music soared out across the hills, further scrambling the alien targeting software. One of Vixer's highest-ranking generals, Tavrin, arrived in a hovercraft to deliver an update. He wore a heavy expression, which Vixer instantly recognized as shame. Tavrin reported, "Commander, we have lost at least 40% of our assault battalions to desertion." Vixer sputtered. "Desertion? Are you telling me they have joined the human side?" Tavrin sighed. "Not exactly. They aren't fighting with the humans. They're partying with them. They have thrown down arms and accepted offers of beverage. Some are singing. Some are dancing. We're receiving dozens of transmissions from troopers who can barely speak. They claim these Earth people are actually rather fun, that we shouldn't be so hasty with extermination, and so forth." Vixer bristled. "This is an insult to the honor of the Dominion. We have subdued entire planets. We do not yield to primitive cultures." He began to storm away, but Tavrin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Commander, with respect, we may need to negotiate." The look of disgust on Vixer's face could have melted steel. He spat. "Negotiate with them?" Tavrin nodded slowly. "Our advanced technology doesn't help if we cannot maintain discipline. Their methods are, ironically, more damaging to us than any conventional defense. They lure us into this chaotic camaraderie." Vixer shook Tavrin's hand off violently. "Never. I refuse." He stomped through the muddy field, stepping over unconscious troopers, human and alien alike, moving deeper into the highland terrain in search of a vantage point. Rolling hills lay before him, dotted with small stands of pine and occasional rocky outcrops. From behind one outcrop emerged a group of Scots. They carried battered rifles that probably dated from decades past, or else brandished swords that belonged in a museum. The one in front was a tall woman with her hair in a thick braid, wearing a weathered kilt and hiking boots. Her gaze locked on a Vixer with an amused glint. "You must be the boss squid," she said. "Heard you were looking to blow us all to smithereens." Vixer drew himself up. "I am Commander Vixer of the Thrall Dominion. We will not be deterred by your savage theatrics." A couple of her companions snickered. She stepped closer, unafraid, and extended a hand. "I am Fiona Maculaish. And if you're the big boss, maybe we can talk. All this fighting is cutting into our drinking time. Vixer reared back, startled by her absolute lack of fear and by the unwavering calm in her voice. I did not negotiate with. She cut him off by pressing a flask into his hand. Try it, she said with a small shrug. If you still want to kill us afterward, feel free. Commander Vixer found himself torn between pride and curiosity. He had seen how dangerously enticing this earth liquor was to his soldiers. He gripped the flask, tentacles trembling, and popped it open. A waft of smokiness assaulted his senses. Perhaps it was anger or frustration or some desire to prove that he could withstand anything humans threw at him. But he lifted the flask and took a long swallow. The immediate burn on his throat was shocking. For a moment, the entire world spun. He coughed violently, the liquid searing its way down to his primary stomach. He felt warmth, then an inexplicable sense of, well, it wasn't quite euphoria, but it resembled an easing of tension. Fiona McLeish smirked. Good, right? Not everyone appreciates the peatiness. Vixer forcibly steadied himself. He wanted to rage that it was poison. But in truth, it was doing something strange to him, unraveling the constant knot of anger in his chest. His vision swam. The drizzle felt oddly refreshing, and for a moment, he almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. He quickly snapped himself out of it. This changes nothing, he grated, but his voice sounded less certain. She just shrugged again. All right, big man. If you change your mind, we're having a bonfire over that hill, near the old stone circle. You can't miss it. We're teaching some of your men how to dance to bagpipes. By the time the sun set, the highlands were ablaze with an unholy mixture of battle and celebration. Some thrall squads still attempted to regroup, while others had surrendered entirely to the phenomenon of let's just enjoy ourselves. A handful of Scots had been injured in actual skirmishes, but local medical volunteers patched them up while pressing a bottle of whiskey into their hands. Alien troopers were similarly half-nursed, half-encouraged to keep partying. Drones flew overhead, scanning the madness, sending back footage to the flagship. Inside that flagship, the crew was reeling from contradictory reports. The Council of Allied Worlds had begun to ping Vixer for status updates. All they got were short, frantic messages about the humans' unstoppable aggressive friendship tactics. Eventually, Vixer found himself alone by a small lock, gazing at his reflection in the dark water. He saw a proud thrall officer, tentacles coiled, eyes full of turmoil. He had come to Earth certain of conquest. Instead, he faced an enemy that laughed in the face of destruction, that drank like their livers were forged from steel, and that, bizarrely, offered acceptance the moment you lowered your guard. He hated it, and he feared it too, for reasons he couldn't quite define. How could a civilization that seemed so primitive confound them so thoroughly? The next day, a battered battalion of thrall troopers attempted a more coordinated strike under cover of dawn, hoping to catch the Highlanders asleep or hungover. They approached quietly through the mist. At first, they believed they had an advantage. But as they neared a cluster of tents, they found half the occupants already awake, stoking fires and passing around coffee laced with whiskey. When the troopers fired warning shots, the Scots rolled behind rocks for cover, returning fire with outdated rifles that somehow still inflicted damage if aimed properly. Then a volley of bagpipe music started up from another ridge. Not that again, the troopers muttered. Their sensors flickered. The effect was smaller now that they'd adapted, but it remained disorienting enough to disrupt formation. The Scots took advantage, moving in unpredictable bursts. One man hopped from rock to rock, brandishing a comedic plastic sword he must have found in a tourist shop, yet screaming as if it were Excalibur itself. The troopers looked genuinely confused. Another Scotswoman dove into the fray, snatching a plasma rifle from an alien's hands and demanding, "All right, you big tentacled Egypt, we'll see how you fancy a taste of your own weapon." She promptly discovered she had no idea how to operate it, so she threw it down and tackled the trooper physically. This flamboyant style of combat defied everything the Thrall Dominion had trained for. Commander Vixer observed from a distance, cursing beneath his breath. This was hopeless. The humans weren't unstoppable in the normal sense. They were simply unstoppable in their refusal to take warfare seriously. Even those who were deadly serious fought with a spirited determination that seemed to multiply the moment bagpipes started. Meanwhile, a number of thrall troopers kept drifting toward the fires, lured by the promise of strong drink, or perhaps by curiosity about these boisterous earth folk. Over the next hours, sporadic fighting flared up, died down, and was replaced by more pockets of fraternization. By mid-afternoon, the Highlands looked like a battleground, and a giant festival had collided in the strangest possible way. A few hours later, Commander Vixer tried one last gambit. He declared that if the humans would not surrender, he would direct the flagship to unleash maximum firepower, scorching entire swathes of land. Maybe that would break their spirits. Word spread among the Scots, and for a short moment, there was a hush. A wave of apprehension rippled through the ranks of kilted defenders. They realized that total annihilation was a possibility. Some looked uncertain. Others set their jaws. One man muttered, "If they want to blow us all to the afterlife, at least we'll go with a drink in hand." Before the final order could be given, a group of Scots approached Vixer under a white rag tied to a stick. Fiona MacLeish was among them, along with Ian MacDunn. Their expressions were solemn. Well, as solemn as they could manage after a day and a half of intermittent partying. They said, "We want to talk." "For real this time." Vixer sneered. "I have no intention of entertaining further subterfuge." Ian MacDunn sighed. "Look, Commander, you're obviously powerful, and we get that. But do you really want to destroy this land? You might level these hills, but you'll be remembered as the species that bombed a bunch of folks who just want to share a dram or two." Fiona fixed her gaze on Vixer. "There's more to Earth than just us, you know. The Highlands are small bit, but we all stand together in our own chaotic way. If you want to press that button, you can. No one can stop you. But do you truly gain anything by turning us to ash?" Vixer wanted to dismiss them. The logic in his mind insisted that the Dominion must maintain its dominance. Yet something in Fiona's tone, the earnestness with which these scruffy humans spoke, forced him to pause. He recalled the glimpses of camaraderie, the laughter, the tentacles of his own troopers draped companionably over human shoulders as they sang songs whose lyrics they didn't even understand. He remembered the burn of that whiskey and how, for one fleeting moment, it had melted away the tension inside him. He took a long, shuddering breath. "What do you propose?" Fiona replied, "We propose that you leave. If you want to keep trading or sending envoys, fair enough. But drop the invasion idea. We're not about to kneel before you, obviously. But neither are we looking to chase you across the galaxy." Ian chimed in with a grin. "We'd love to drink with you again if you come back on friendlier terms." Vixer's mind reeled. Was it that simple? Could the Thrall Dominion truly give up on conquering Earth, after all the indignities and chaos that humans had inflicted upon the galaxy? The alternative was mutual destruction. Perhaps it was better to retreat honorably, claiming Earth was too volatile or impractical to occupy. At that precise moment, Vixer's communicator beeped. The Council of Allied Worlds was demanding a status report. He stared at the device as it blinked in his hand. What could he possibly say? That thousands of the Dominion's best troops had been neutralized by partying? That Earth's secret weapon was a combination of bagpipes and distilled grain? The truth was so humiliating that even he, in all his frustration, could not bring himself to utter it plainly. He answered the call. "Commander Vixer here. Earth is indefensible. Their culture is a destructive force that undermines discipline at every turn. I recommend we withdraw and mark this planet as too high risk for conquest." The council members on the other end fell silent. Finally, a voice crackled back in disbelief. "Are you suggesting that the Thrall Dominion simply abandon the invasion? That we accept humans as they are?" Vixer's throat tightened. He glanced at Fiona and Ian, who stood there calmly, as if trusting him to do the right thing. He responded, "Yes. We have no effective counter to their methodology. Any further attempts will only result in the dissolution of our own forces. If the Council wishes to proceed, They can send a second wave, but I doubt it will fare any better. He terminated the link before they could protest further. A hush fell over the hillside. Then Vixer turned to the Scots and exhaled. Fine, we will leave. But do not imagine that we do this out of weakness. Fiona shrugged. We never said you were weak. We just don't want to be conquered. Ian chuckled. You can come back as guests next time. It'll be a lot more fun, yeah? Vixer managed a grim smirk. I'll consider it. Soon after, the battered Thrall troops began boarding their dropships. Many had trouble parting from the new buddies they had made, some hugging or exchanging tokens, a kilt for an alien gauntlet, a bottle of whiskey for some piece of advanced technology. The Scots, for their part, teased them mercilessly, saying, You can't handle your drink, can you? The aliens, in turn, muttered, We can handle it just fine, if we had the proper filtration systems. The goodbyes had an unexpectedly affectionate tone for a battlefield. Then the dropships lifted off into the sky, leaving behind scorched grass, empty casks, toppled drones, and confused news reporters who had no idea how to summarize this fiasco. High above the planet, the Thrall flagship made final preparations to depart. Many across Earth celebrated. Some worried that the aliens might return with a vengeance. But for the moment, the crisis had passed. In the Highlands, the ragtag volunteers sat around crackling bonfires, exchanging tales of their exploits. A few battered, wryly grinning Scots showed off tentacle-shaped bruises. Some held up captured alien helmets as trophies, and others brandished half-functional plasma rifles with no idea how to reload them. Over the following weeks, the human race as a whole tried to make sense of what had happened. Governments had prepared for total war, only to watch an improbable scenario unfold. Analysts wrote essays on how Earth's cultural unpredictability had saved them. Pundits joked that the real superweapon was a distillery in the Highlands. Rumors circulated that a segment of the Thrall Dominion was planning a quiet return trip, not to conquer, but to indulge in Earth's festivities once more. Meanwhile, the Council of Allied Worlds received Vixer's official report, which was couched in language about excessive psychoactive cultural elements and irreparable breakdown of chain of command. They could hardly make sense of it all, but they decided to let Earth be, for now. For the Scots involved, life returned to a semblance of normality, though with a new sense of pride. They had repelled an alien invasion, or more accurately, swallowed it up in raucous hospitality. Ian MacDunn liked to joke that if he ever spotted another dropship overhead, he'd just lay out some chairs and a barrel of whiskey, because apparently that was more effective than any surface-to-air missile. Fiona McLeish found herself invited to speak at a local council meeting, where she calmly explained that while Earth was full of differences, nationalities, ideologies, all that, when it came down to it, unity could emerge in the strangest ways. A common enemy might prompt humans to fight as one, but a common party could do so just as effectively, maybe more so. On some crisp autumn evening, one might still see faint scorch marks on certain highland hills where the aliens had landed. Yet in those very spots, local lads would gather to play pipes, dance, or share stories. Some even wove tall tales of how they wrestled a tentacled general to the ground, only to end up singing bawdy songs in Gaelic together. The truth and the myth blurred deliciously in the smoky air, drifting upward under starry skies. And if you listened closely in the hush of night, you might hear the echo of bagpipes carried on the wind, a distant lament or a celebration, maybe both. In the end, the invasion of Earth by the Thrall Dominion became legendary across the galaxy for all the wrong reasons. Future civilizations hearing the rumor would wonder how an advanced species could fail so miserably. They would learn about the humans, about their capacity for reckless joy, irreverent humor, and stubborn resilience. They would shake their heads at the mention of those swirling kilts, the half-mad whine of the bagpipes, the lethal brew called whiskey, and the unstoppable momentum of a people who refused to cower or yield. Earth had not simply fought back. It had enveloped the invaders in a bizarre embrace of defiant friendship. And so the Thrall Dominion withdrew, battered but strangely enlightened, leaving behind unanswered questions, countless unintentional friendships, and a lot of half-empty bottles. Commander Vixer found himself haunted by memories of that swirling smoke, the fierce grin of a Scotsman offering him one more drink, and the feeling of losing control in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant. He never made a formal vow to return, but he carried a small flask of Earth whiskey, a token of the strangest battle he had ever waged. In idle moments, he would uncap it, remember that burning aroma, and ask himself if Earth was truly insane, or if perhaps the rest of the galaxy was missing out on something. Time passed. Earth recovered from the shock, though rumors of alien pals lingered. Governments bickered over how to handle future cosmic threats. But for all their discussions, one fact remained unspoken yet undeniable. If anyone threatened Earth again, the world now knew that official militaries alone weren't the only line of defense. They might well say, send them to the Highlands. They'll see what it's like to face claymores and bagpipes, and an invitation to party like there's no tomorrow. For the Highlanders themselves, it became a matter of local lore. Grandchildren heard bedtime stories of how old Uncle Fergus had but an alien wearing a seven-tentacled helmet. Nearby in a pub, there might be a battered sign reading, reserved for the thrall lads, if they ever come back. An odd hush might descend whenever people recalled those chaotic days. And then, inevitably, someone would start a round of laughter, raise a pint, and toast to the day we welcomed an alien army and taught them how we do things in the Highlands. Thus ended, at least for the moment, the Dominion's attempt to conquer Earth. By any traditional measure, the invasion had failed miserably or succeeded spectacularly, depending on your point of view. The final impression was that Earth, messy and ungovernable as it was, possessed a strange power the Council of Allied Worlds had not fully understood. A refusal to bow to intimidation, a flair for turning violence into revelry, and a stubborn sense of honor that mingled easily with irreverent humor. There were many lessons to be drawn, but perhaps the simplest was the same one immortalized in countless toasts across the Highlands in the days that followed. They sent an army against Earth. Humans introduced the Highlanders, and the galaxy would never quite forget it. Ambassador Rachel Ward paused at the entrance to the Grand Hall of the Galactic Federation's central administrative complex, taking in the sight for perhaps the 100th time since humanity's admission into this towering bureaucracy. The space was breathtaking, shimmering walls of living crystal, banners of alien script fluttering in streams of artificially generated breeze, and levels upon levels of delegates from dozens of species milling about. Rows of seating rose so high that the topmost tiers vanished in a swirl of distant, cloud-like canopies. Even so, every time she stepped inside, a small, nagging thought reminded her that none of this had ever been intended for human eyes. Humanity had arrived at this stage only after nearly 30 years of kowtowing and scraping for the Federation's approval. And yet, no matter how many times Ward witnessed this spectacle, the sting of their relegation to the absolute bottom rung of the social ladder never quite faded. She had perfected her diplomatic smile, the one that conveyed politeness without revealing a shred of the frustration that burned inside her. If any of the aliens noticed the tension in her stance, they gave no indication. To most of them, humans were a quaint novelty, a species that had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light technology well ahead of schedule and now occupied the basement offices of interstellar politics. But to Rachel Ward, wearing her crisp, dark suit tailored to Federation norms, this place was not merely the heart of a wondrous multi-species endeavor. It was also a stage for centuries of condescension, orchestrated by alien powers who saw Earth as little more than an amusing footnote. Standing by her side was Marcus Johnson, her security advisor, arms crossed behind his back in a posture that signified both boredom and controlled irritation. "Every time we walk in here," he said quietly, leaning in so only she could hear, "I feel like they've lowered our speaking slot by another minute." He gave the slightest roll of his eyes. "At this rate, we'll be lucky to get 60 seconds at the microphone." Ward allowed herself a faint smile. "Diplomacy at all costs, remember?" she replied, keeping her voice low. "We endure. We learn. We outlast. Johnson nodded, though the look in his eyes suggested he was counting the days until the charade could end. He, like many in the human delegation, was tired of watching these exotic species treat humans as if they were an amusing side act at a cosmic carnival. At the far end of the hall, a group of towering reptilian beings parted the crowds with an air of arrogant privilege. They were Drari, members of one of the Federation's founding species, with elongated skulls and slick black eyes that caught the overhead lights. Their hegemony stretched across many systems, and they harbored little patience for species they deemed backward. One of them, bearing the ornate sash of a first minister, cast a dismissive glance at the human party before focusing on a crystalline-bodied dignitary from the Fedar Collective. It was always the same. Humans were overlooked, relegated to a corner, forced to endure the sneers. Yet Rachel Ward had played this game for years. And if the aliens only knew how elaborate that game truly was. Maria Ramirez, deputy ambassador, materialized at Ward's left shoulder, brandishing a small hollow pad. We're up next. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. As usual. Let's see if we can finish in 5, Ward said lightly. And give them 2.5 to think. Ramirez's mouth twitched. You're a real optimist, Ambassador. They wove through the crowd to a designated platform at the center of the chamber's ground floor. The platforms were arranged in a descending spiral from the top tiers, the seats of the Federation's founders, to the bottom, where lesser, newer, or subjugated species gave their perfunctory statements. The humans stood at the lowest ring, beneath 1,000 alien eyes. A droning chime cut through the chatter. The Federation recognizes Ambassador Rachel Ward of Earth, intoned a holographic interface at the center of the hall. Ward stepped forward, voice calm and measured. She delivered a quick update on Earth's efforts to rehabilitate areas affected by climate shifts, gave a small overview of scientific progress on Mars, and gently reminded the Federation that humanity had been diligently following interstellar protocol for trade expansions. As she spoke, she observed the delegates. She saw the Fedar envoy, apparently busy polishing the edges of its crystalline torso. She noted the Midal representative, a gaseous balloon of swirling colors, drifting as if half asleep. Even the Drari First Minister appeared more interested in grooming his neck spines than listening. It was always the same. Still, she finished gracefully, thanked the Federation for its ongoing guidance, and stepped away. Applause was barely audible. Perfunctory taps of tentacles, the swish of membranes, or the chirps from insectoid delegates. Another chime signaled the next order of business. The polite condescension in the environment was nearly palpable. Johnson exhaled, muttering under his breath. Diplomacy at all costs. Ward shot him a sidelong glance. Patience, Marcus. Our day will come. We've invested 27 years in this. Another few months won't kill us. Then, leading her small retinue away from the spotlight, she allowed herself a moment's private satisfaction. She had caught at least 2 or 3 delegates looking at the humans with more curiosity than usual. If only these aliens suspected how busy humans had truly been behind the scenes. The embassy allocated to Earth was essentially a repurposed maintenance facility attached to the Federation complex. It was cramped, smelled faintly of synthetic antiseptic, and offered minimal views of the sprawling city outside. Yet it was also the nerve center of Earth's clandestine operations within the Federation. The living area served as a facade. Behind sealed doors lay advanced encryption suites, quantum communication labs, and a hidden staff who had spent almost 3 decades burrowing into the Federation's infrastructure. That evening, Ward convened a gathering in the main conference room with the most trusted members of her staff. Ramirez sat nearest to her, reviewing the day's futile pleas. Huang Li, Earth's economic attaché, quietly tapped data on a hollow screen, scanning supply chain routes across the galaxy. Johnson paced in the corner, expression grim as always. I spoke to one of the Midal delegates after the session, Ramirez said. They're about to sign off on a plan that lets the Drail Consortium secure rights to the outer Sol system, specifically the moons of Jupiter. They didn't even bother to consult us. Johnson barked a humorless laugh. Surprise, surprise. Next I'll be taking Saturn's rings without asking. Ward's gaze hardened. We knew they'd try something like this. We just didn't know how soon. Her voice gained a quiet resolve. This might be the push we need. Huang Li looked up from his data streams. Our investments and shell corporations hold critical stakes in the Federation's shipping and energy sectors, he announced. We're nearly at the threshold where we can exert significant leverage if we go that route. Ramirez's expression was pained. And potentially break the fragile peace we've maintained. We never had peace, Johnson snapped. We had condescension. That's different. Ward gently drummed her fingers against the table. The tension in the room was thick. We've spent 27 years playing the hapless newcomers. For a time, it was beneficial to let them believe in their own superiority. We gained insight. We quietly reverse-engineered everything they tossed our way, and we built alliances in the shadows. But now, it's become a full-blown resource grab. If they start carving up our solar system, she took a measured breath. We might not have another choice. Johnson stopped pacing, turned to face her. How much longer do we wait? Her eyes flickered with carefully contained steel. Not much. Despite the humiliating indignities the Federation forced upon Earth's representatives, menial committee appointments, procedural roadblocks, minuscule speaking times, humanity had methodically exploited every crack in the system. Whenever they received a piece of outdated technology from a generous benefactor, Earth's best minds dissected and refined it. When Federation security was proclaimed impenetrable, human scientists found ways to sneak Trojans and infiltration code into the very operating systems that powered the Federation's vast networks. Over and over, the aliens laughed at Earth's so-called primitiveness, never suspecting that behind the illusions of incompetence, the old adage was playing out. The cunning underdog who studied the fortress from within. Even the Federation's intelligence reports about Earth had been skillfully planted. The official narratives described humans as overly emotional, prone to internal conflicts, hopelessly behind in advanced propulsion and weaponry. That was precisely the impression Earth had wanted to convey. It kept the Federation complacent. Yet the greatest coup might have been the economic infiltration masterminded by Huang Li. Over the course of 2 decades, using proxies and front companies that appeared to be run by aliens from minor civilizations, Earth had purchased large shares in vital Federation industries, antimatter production, trade corridors, and raw material refining. Time and again, Federation bureaucrats accepted these new investors, never linking them to the primitive humans they so easily dismissed. It was only a matter of pressing the right button, or more specifically, flipping the right switch. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, hidden from prying alien surveillance, a massive installation, churned with advanced machinery that Earth supposedly would not develop for another 100 years. This was the heart of a united Earth Defense Force, the real UEDF, not the token contingent observed by the Federation's official monitors. Here, prototypes of quantum displacement engines, gravitational disruptors, and infiltration devices were built and tested away from suspecting eyes. In the gloom of one of those control rooms, dozens of operators watched live feeds from space-based facilities. A covert fleet, thousands of vessels that Earth had constructed in secret, lay cloaked near shipping lanes or disguised as harmless debris. They were ready to strike at a moment's notice. Standing on an elevated platform, Fleet Admiral Njeri Sewell surveyed the data with quiet pride. If, or when the call came, they would seize the Federation's throats in a single synchronized move. 1 week later, the official communiqué from the Federation's Economic Council arrived at the Earth Embassy. It was a simple message that hammered home the extent of the alien arrogance. Announcement of approved development. Jupiter moons. Effective immediately, Drail Consortium rights have been granted. Earth's petition for partial co-management is hereby denied. In recognition of Earth's potential future utility, the Federation will allocate 0.03% of extracted resources to your civilization as a sign of goodwill. Ambassador Rachel Ward read it twice, her eyes tracing each line until the paper nearly crumpled in her grip. She inhaled, steadied her breathing, and stood. "Marcus Maria Huang," she said quietly, "it's time." They had known this day would come. They had prepared for it. But there was still a collective hush that fell over the room, as if they all felt the weight of crossing a threshold from which there was no return. Ramirez swallowed hard. "We're certain? Because once we push this button, there's no going back." Ward's voice held no waver. "They have unilaterally dismissed our sovereignty over our own solar system. They've demonstrated time and again that they see us as, at best, an exploitable asset. If we do nothing, Earth remains a cosmic doormat. But if we act, we show them who we really are," Johnson finished, his tone edging on fierce satisfaction. "Let's do it." Ward allowed a thin smile. She took a quantum-encoded communicator from a hidden compartment, a piece of technology the Federation believed humans would not master for another century. She keyed in a sequence. The device hummed softly. "Defense Council, this is Ambassador Ward," she said. "Execute protocol enough already." The reply from Earth's hidden command was instant. "Protocol enough already confirmed. T-minus 6 hours to synchronization." Ramirez exhaled audibly. 6 hours. "So it begins." Ward nodded, carefully placing the communicator back in the compartment. "We have a final appointment before the Federation's General Assembly." Perfect timing. She had a final conversation with Minister Kaleran of the Benevolent Systems, one of the few Federation officials who treated humanity with genuine respect. Kaleran hurried to the Earth Embassy the moment news broke of the Drail plan. His amphibian features appeared anxious as he stepped into the conference room. "Ambassador Ward," Kaleran said, pressing his webbed fingers together. "I tried to oppose the motion. They refused to listen. You must understand, Vorex and the Drari hegemony see humans as trivial. There's talk about restricting Earth's ability to even petition further." Ward thanked him politely, acknowledging his consistent attempts to advocate for Earth. She withheld the deeper truths, worried that any ally within the Federation might become collateral damage if they knew too much. "We appreciate your honesty," she said softly. "Sometimes it takes a crisis to force real change." His large eyes blinked twice in confusion. "Change?" Ward simply smiled. "You'll see soon enough." Hours later, the Grand Hall was convened again under an emergency session. The impetus: Earth's repeated objections to the Jupiter mining operation. Chancellor Vorex of the Drail Consortium took center stage, proclaiming that the matter had already been decided, that Earth was being emotional and naive. The gathered delegates of the Federation murmured approval. They had heard it all before, a smaller or lesser species complaining that the founders overrode them. Humanity seemed no different. Vorex spread his mandibles in a mockery of smile. "We have indulged Earth's continual requests for fair consideration. But as the Federation sees it, a civilization that cannot properly harness faster-than-light technology beyond a single star system has no grounds to claim entire gas giants and their moons. The development rights, therefore, remain with the Drail Consortium." A bored, automated voice announced, "The Assembly will now hear from Ambassador Rachel Ward of Earth. Time. Allocation, 3 minutes." A few half-hearted taps echoed through the chamber. Ward ascended the dais, a calm presence in a place thick with tension and condescension. She glanced briefly at Johnson, Ramirez, and Huang, each stationed in vantage spots around the hall. They gave the slightest nods of readiness. The moment had come. "Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Federation," she began in a steady voice, "we humans have spent 27 years abiding by your rules, respecting your hierarchies, seeking peaceful inclusion in this grand alliance. Today, I must formally announce that we can no longer continue on that path." A ripple of mild confusion spread across some of the delegates. They had expected the usual human groveling, perhaps another plea for better treatment. Instead, Ward's words struck a different chord. Chancellor Vorex clicked his mandibles. "Ambassador, if this is another trivial protest." Ward raised a hand, surprising him in his silence. "No, Chancellor. This is a notification. Effective immediately, Earth is withdrawing from all prior diplomatic agreements with the Federation. We're also initiating something we call Protocol Enough already. She tapped a device on her wrist, and every display screen in the colossal chamber flashed to life with a single countdown. It was a mere 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds seemed to stretch into eternity, the numbers in bright red. 10, 9, 8. Many delegates exchanged uncertain looks. Then, at 0, the vast overhead lighting flickered. It was a momentary dimming, barely a second, but enough to elicit startled hisses, chirps, and howls. The Federation's power grid was rumored to be fail-safe, immune to tampering. Ward's voice carried across the hall. What you just witnessed was a demonstration. We've spent years studying your technology, your security protocols, your hubris. And in the process, we have, to put it bluntly, reverse-engineered everything you thought we could not possibly understand. An uproar ensued. Some delegates called for security, but a collective gasp halted them. Every weapon in the chamber, from sidearms to ceremonial rifles, lifted out of their holsters and rose slowly into the air, as if held by invisible strings. All courtesy of localized gravitational manipulation, Ward explained, her tone carefully measured. Technology your experts believe humanity was generations away from developing. Chancellor Vorex's voice rose in outrage. This is an act of war. On the contrary, Ward replied, this is an act of reclaiming our dignity. For years, we endured your smug pity. You handed us outdated scrap, insisted we remain in your basement, and now you're seizing our solar system's resources. We gave you every chance to respect us. You refused. The screens in the chamber shifted, displaying real-time footage from around Federation space. One clip showed a revered Federation fleet. Thousands of battleships, the unstoppable pride of their combined forces, now drifting aimlessly, their engines offline. Another clip showed the Federation's central banking servers knocked into archaic safe mode. Still another clip revealed entire shipyards floating helplessly as gravitational clamps malfunctioned. Panicked roars and chemical excretions from various species filled the hall. Huang Li's face appeared on one feed, speaking from a hidden Earth-based command center. We regret any inconvenience, he said with measured composure. But perhaps it's time we had an honest conversation about resource distribution. You see, through a series of front companies, Earth holds controlling stakes in nearly half your supply chains. We can shut them down at will. We prefer not to. A gaseous mitral delegate, swirling with nervous pulses of color, stammered, How is this possible? Ward answered, because you never believed we were capable of it. You saw only your illusions of human primitiveness. We used that to our advantage. Outrage erupted from the higher tiers of the chamber. Grand Arbiter Seshik, a towering arthropod with spiked forelimbs, slammed the floor. You cannot hold the Federation hostage. Ward raised a brow. Hostage? That's a strong word. We've spent years trying to be valued members of this community. But the Federation's founders treat any new species as second class. So let's be precise. We are not destroying you. We're giving you an ultimatum. Either reshape this Federation into a place of equitable representation, one that respects the sovereignty of every member, or face the consequences of your own arrogance. To demonstrate Earth's seriousness, Johnson triggered another display, a stealth battle station disguised as an asteroid, unfolding in the outer reaches of Federation territory. It glowed with swirling energy, capable of unleashing a cataclysmic pulse. We have over 200 stations like this, Johnson's voice echoed. We can annihilate every major shipyard or planet with the press of a button. Fear radiated through the hall. A small cheer, however, rose from the lower tiers where species that had endured the same condescending treatment as humans recognized a moment of vindication. They had once believed humans to be merely a weaker ally. Now they saw Earth revealing the truth. A cunning, methodical underdog that had lulled the Federation's apex species into complacency. Vorex still raged. We'll never submit to your threats. Ward pinned him with a steely gaze. Submit or share power. There's a difference, Chancellor. We have no desire to become the new tyrants. We simply demand you end the resource grab in our solar system and any other exploitation of so-called lesser worlds. We present to you a new charter. Review it, debate it, sign it if you wish to preserve any shred of your current civilization. But do not mistake our patience for weakness ever again. A hush fell over the assembly. Some founding species erupted with paternalistic scorn. Others cowered. But from the unaligned tiers came applause, real applause, for the first time directed at Earth. The fate of the Federation had changed in a matter of minutes. No one actually died that day. Earth used the demonstration of unstoppable power without letting a single lethal shot be fired. Yet from an alien perspective, it was a day of cosmic-scale upheaval. Decrepit illusions of human incompetence shattered. The Federation's proud militaries discovered their advanced systems had been compromised at every level. And the boardrooms of commerce realized they had unwittingly become dependent on hidden Earth-control ventures. In the frantic aftermath, the Federation founders convened in secret to consider a response. Perhaps a fraction of them toyed with trying to mount a counterattack. But intelligence soon revealed just how deeply Earth had infiltrated their weaponry. And no one wanted to risk having their entire fleet mysteriously teleported into a black hole. Within hours, Minister Kaelrin of the Benevolent Systems found himself in a swirl of emergency negotiations. Ward and a handful of Earth's top officials sat across from trembling representatives of the founding species. The demands were straightforward. Immediate cessation of the Drail Consortium's Jupiter exploitation project, recognition of Earth's sovereignty over its own solar system, and a complete overhaul of the Federation's governance structure to grant full representation to every member, not just the self-important founders. Kaelrin, who had always empathized with humanity's plight, was appointed chief mediator for the crisis talks. He was shaken by how swiftly the political map had been redrawn. "You concealed your capabilities well," he confessed to Ward, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dismay. "Your kindness over the years has not gone unnoticed," she told him. "It's because of people like you that we chose to show mercy instead of total retribution." Kaelrin nodded, uncertain how to feel about being thankful for a mercy that exposed the entire Federation's vulnerability. "I fear there will be bitterness among the founders. They won't easily forgive humans for outmaneuvering them." Ward's voice hardened. "We don't need their forgiveness, Minister. We need their respect." 1 year passed. The once vertical hierarchy of the Federation was slowly dismantled. The new charter, nicknamed the Jupiter Accords, had mandated that every species, from the proud Drari to the quiet Midal, would be seated at a circular forum symbolizing equality. Gone were the days of founders perched on high, dispensing privileges to the rest. That structure had been hammered down by Earth's revelations. Ambassador Ward stepped into the newly renovated Assembly Hall, still grand, but reworked so no vantage point lorded over another. The changes were more than cosmetic. A whole new set of bylaws dictated resource sharing, dispute resolution, and membership voting. Earth took its seat alongside the very species who once sneered and barely offered a passing glance. Chancellor Vorex, now simply Representative Vorex of the Drail Consortium, sat with arms crossed. The tension in his posture spoke of lingering resentment. Even so, he had no choice but to accept the new system. The Drail's attempt to seize Jupiter's moons had precipitated the Federation's biggest reckoning, and they had emerged on the losing side. Ambassador Ward intoned the new presiding official, none other than Minister Kaelrin, elevated to the position of neutral moderator. "Earth, please present the updates regarding your solar system's resource plan." Ward rose. She wore a subdued smile. "Thank you, Moderator Kaelrin. I report that Earth's newly formed Council for Extraterrestrial Collaboration has opened discussions with numerous species about joint research on the Jupiter system. However," she added, a slight glint in her eye, "we maintain our sovereignty. This is a partnership, not an exploitation." Some in the forum coughed or clicked mandibles in vague annoyance, but none dared to protest openly. The Jupiter Accords gave them the right to voice dissent, but in a reformed federation, no single faction could simply override Earth's stance again. After the session, Ward was joined by Ramirez, Johnson, and Huang Li in a quiet corridor. They exchanged relieved glances. "We've come a long way," Ramirez murmured, marveling at the calmer atmosphere. "Still plenty of tension out there," Johnson cautioned. "Plenty of founders who'd love a shot at revenge. But they won't try anything too soon, not unless they figure out how to break our infiltration methods." Huang Li lowered his voice. "And if they do break it, we still have our gravitational disruptors and quantum displacement. They know it's better to share resources than to challenge us." Ward looked out a window at the skyline. Alien spires, shimmering walkways, and drifting vehicles. It had once symbolized her dream for Earth's place in a grand cosmic community. It was a dream that came only after unthinkable stress and cunning. "I wonder if it could have gone differently," she said quietly. "If the Federation had just welcomed us warmly in the beginning, we might have built alliances without all this deception." Ramirez placed a hand on her shoulder. "Perhaps, but we can't rewrite the past. We just ensure the future is better." Late in the evening, Ward found herself in the old, converted maintenance annex that had served as Earth's embassy for so many years. Though Earth now held a rightful place in the restructured Federation, she had chosen to remain here for one final night, a symbolic farewell to the indignities endured and the secrets kept. She wandered the corridors, recalling the echo of countless times she had sat at a cheap metal desk, drafting politely worded letters to committees that never listened. She remembered the frustration that boiled under every well-practiced smile. And she remembered the hush that fell when they first decided to infiltrate the Federation's technology, quietly rewriting codes and forging hidden alliances. Johnson joined her, offering a ghost of a grin. "We really were a basement-dwelling species in their eyes." "Only in their eyes," Ward said. "We always had the capacity for more." They paused at the old conference room, where the decisive call had been made. The place had been stripped bare, leaving the faint outlines on the wall where screens and devices had once been. "No turning back," Johnson recalled with a quiet laugh. "Funny to think how easily it all fell into place once we flipped that switch." "It took decades of planning," Ward corrected. "Nothing about it was easy. The Federation left us no choice." The distant hum of the city's night cycle engines rumbled through the walls. They both knew that, in forging this new arrangement, humanity had arguably saved countless other species from subjugation. But they also knew the road ahead remained uncertain. Rivalries burned hot in the interstellar realm, and Earth's newly asserted position made it a target. Even so, humans no longer needed to cower or bluff. They had shown the galaxy their teeth, and that single demonstration had secured them a seat at the table. In an observation deck near the top of the renovated Central Administrative Complex, the starry expanse stretched across the domed ceiling. Ward stood with Ramirez and Huang Li, gazing at the swirl of distant stars. Their vantage point offered a panoramic look at the teeming metropolis below. Alien skyscrapers and crystalline towers glowed under artificial suns. "I remember my first trip here," Ramirez said softly. "I was so awestruck by all these advanced species, all the wonders they'd achieved. I genuinely thought we'd become part of something beautiful." Huang Li nodded. "We did, just not the way we expected. Sometimes you have to break the old structure to build something better." Ramirez pursed her lips. "Do you think we broke it? Or did we just replace one flawed hierarchy with another that we control?" Ward shook her head. "We had the chance to seize total power. We didn't. We gave them all a seat in the circle. That circle is a commitment, not an empty gesture." She turned, resting a hand on Ramirez's shoulder. "We're not tyrants. We're equal partners now, enforced by overwhelming capability, yes, but the offer stands for genuine cooperation. That's the best compromise we could achieve." Johnson approached, having stepped out to scan the updated security feeds. "Some of the Drari ambassadors are still skulking around, complaining about humiliations. They're trying to find any glitch in our infiltration network, any opening. We'll have to keep watch." Ward sighed. "Let them try. The good news is that several other species are thrilled to see the founders dethroned. They'll likely side with us to keep the Federation stable. They fell into a silence as they watched the cities. Lights twinkle. The Federation had been changed irrevocably. Earth's place was now assured, but that reassurance came with a burden of leadership. People might call it a cosmic day of reckoning or a necessary realignment. In truth, it was both. A year and some months after the day Earth triggered protocol enough already, they convened a grand ceremony to commemorate the official adoption of the Jupiter Accords across the Federation. Media from countless star systems arrived, capturing footage of the newly configured circular assembly hall. Delegates from over 100 species, some wearing elaborate garments, others exuding colored pheromones, took their seats as equals. A ceremonial dais in the center displayed a rotating hologram of the Federation's combined star maps, indicating the removal of all founder-only zones. Moderator Kaelrin presided over the event, looking composed yet undeniably aware of the tension. "We gather," he announced, "to celebrate the first year of a more equitable Federation. May we continue to grow and share resources without repeating the arrogance of the past." His webbed fingers waved in a subtle gesture, "And we acknowledge those who lit the fire of reform." Ambassador Rachel Ward, representing Earth, and her delegation. There was scattered applause. Some delegates, particularly from the smaller worlds, clapped in genuine enthusiasm. Others offered reluctant, polite taps. But no one dared to sneer as openly as before. Ward stepped up, giving a graceful nod. "We are honored to stand among peers, not superiors. Earth remains committed to collaboration in scientific research, environmental stewardship, and cultural exchange. We look forward to forging a galaxy that thrives on mutual respect." From his seat, now lowered in significance, Vorex gave a barely concealed snarl. Ward met his gaze for a moment, silently acknowledging that hostility still brewed under the surface. But it had no power as long as Earth's infiltration and technology overshadowed the old ways of the Federation. After the ceremony, delegates mingled. This time, representatives from smaller civilizations approached Ward, each speaking of how Earth's defiance had also freed them from countless humiliations. She listened carefully, promising that Earth's new role would be to prevent such exploitation from reappearing under another name. Off in a corner, Johnson sipped a drink from a tall flute, scanning the crowd. He nodded to Ramirez. "We pulled it off. We made them see that for humans, courtesy is not the same as weakness." Ramirez raised her glass. "To humanity, the best underdogs in the galaxy." They clinked glasses. Later that evening, in their newly assigned, far more luxurious embassy quarters, no longer a dingy maintenance annex, Ward and her core team gathered for a private reflection. Gone were the cramped steel walls. Instead, they had windows overlooking the planet's ringed horizon, plush seating, and an actual sense of status. Human staff members moved through the complex, adjusting to the sudden shift from outcasts to recognized power brokers. Ramirez, settling onto a couch, eyed her communicator. "We got a message from half the Midal Collective. They want to propose a joint recycling initiative for cosmic debris. Meanwhile, the Fedar have suggested a collaboration to refine the old Federation server networks. And some insectoid species are asking if we can help them restructure their local committees, now that the old federal oversight is gone." Johnson laughed outright. "Are we becoming the new bureaucracy?" Ward's lips curved. "We might be the only ones capable of ensuring the Federation doesn't slip back into old patterns. We have the leverage. Might as well use it to do some good." Huangli glanced around. "It'll be a challenge. But at least now they listen when we speak." When not that quiet voice drowned out by scorn. A comfortable silence settled over them. The weight of triumphant responsibility mingled with residual wariness. They all knew that the Federation's new era could teeter if Earth showed any sign of weakness or tyranny. Achieving genuine equality was a delicate balancing act. To break the hush, Ward stood, gazing out a wide window. The city lights mirrored faintly on the glass, revealing her own reflection, tired, proud, and determined. We finally stopped being so diplomatic, she said. Yet ironically, we may have paved the way for real diplomacy. Ramirez joined her, smiling softly at the reflection. Sometimes you have to show your claws before anyone's willing to shake your hand. Strange galaxy, but that's where we are. They reminisced about the day they first arrived, nearly 3 decades ago, starry-eyed and hopeful. They recalled the repeated humiliations in the council sessions, the smirks from Vorex and his cohorts, the endless forms they filled for permission to speak. All that time, Earth's quiet infiltration had grown deeper. They had turned every slight into fuel for a future reckoning. And they had won. Outside, hover vehicles soared among the spires of alien architecture, the same city that had once dwarfed them in scale and significance. Now, humans were a force to be reckoned with, shaping the Federation from a vantage point of near equality. Not through pure conquest, but through cunning, technology, and the unwavering refusal to be dismissed again. Days later, Ward attended a smaller council in one of the Federation's resource management committees. This time, half of the seats belonged to species once deemed minor or irrelevant, elevated now by the Jupiter Accords. The agenda focused on how to fairly distribute newly mined resources from peripheral systems. Where in the past Earth's voice would have been smothered by mocking laughter, now the delegates listened carefully. In the hallway afterward, a representative from a once-snubbed civilization approached Ward, speaking haltingly through a translator. We wanted to say, your people's boldness gave us hope. Ward dipped her head in gratitude. We did what we had to. I'm glad it helps others. Not everyone was content, of course. Rumors circulated about certain founding species plotting sabotage, determined to discover the secrets behind Earth's infiltration methods. But Earth's quantum-coded defenses thwarted each attempt. Even if a few lines of infiltration code were detected, the labyrinth of backups and layered encryption proved too much for the disgruntled founders. Each day, the new Federation continued functioning under Earth's watchful eye. In the grand scheme, many saw this shift as a long-overdue revolution. The Federation, initially founded under high ideals, had grown complacent and smug. The entrance of a species like humanity, who refused to remain freaking diplomatic forever, rattled centuries of tradition. Some Federation historians wrote anxious treatises on the human factor, concluding that Earth had displayed a uniquely volatile blend of cunning, resourcefulness, and that moral line between mercy and aggression. For Johnson, it was simpler. We just refuse to be walked on anymore, he told Ramirez one afternoon. They stood on a balcony, glancing at passing starships overhead. After all, how many times can someone condescend to you before you snap? Ramirez gave a small laugh. Thankfully, we channeled our snap into a plan spanning decades. Not exactly an emotional outburst, was it? Touché, Johnson replied, smirking. Sometime later, a formal delegation from the Drari hegemony requested a private meeting with Ward. She sat in a stately chamber that used to be reserved only for founder-level negotiations. The Drari who arrived, the same species that once paraded their dominance, seemed ill at ease. Their elongated skull ridges twitched with anxious tics. They proposed a mutual defense treaty, disclaiming all prior animosity as mere misunderstanding. Ward studied them quietly. She saw how desperation lurked behind their forced smiles. Their hegemony needed Earth's technology, or at least Earth's permission, to resume certain expansions. In the old Federation, the Drari held immeasurable power. Now, they had a bargain like everyone else. She set her terms politely. If the Drari agreed to fundamental resource equality within their region, recognized local species autonomy, and abided by the Jupiter Accords, Earth would consider a technology-sharing program. The Drari delegates spluttered, trying to salvage pride, but found no wiggle room. After a tense hour, the Drari accepted. They left the meeting red-eyed, humiliated, yet committed to cooperating. Johnson, observing from an adjacent room, let out a short, humorless chuckle. They're learning what it's like to be at the mercy of someone else's say-so. Ward's gaze hardened. We won't become them, Marcus. That's important. We won't recreate a new system of oppression, just reversed. We're better than that, right? Johnson inclined his head. Right? Another half-year glided by, and human leadership continued weaving new alliances. More and more, humans shifted from the basement to the forefront of Federation politics, not by brandishing unstoppable force, but by offering equitable cooperation. The memory of the demonstration, floating guns, disabled fleets, teleported battleships, remained fresh in everyone's mind, encouraging a civil approach. In quiet corners of the Federation, suspicion still simmered. But the unstoppable momentum of the Jupiter Accords had done something remarkable. Worlds that once had no voice came forward, demanding representation. Meanwhile, powerful species that once used their seats of privilege realized that the cost of returning to the old ways would be catastrophic. Earth had proven unstoppable, and Earth's demands weren't empire or dominance, but a reformed federation. Cultural exchanges flourished. Earth discovered the secrets of Drari. Agricultural genetics. The Midal Collective taught advanced, terraforming concepts in exchange for Earth's gravitational technology. Freed from the old founder-centric blockade, smaller civilizations initiated trade deals that bypassed the defunct oligarchy. In essence, the galaxy experienced a renaissance sparked by the end of that stifling hierarchy. One crisp evening, Ambassador Ward found herself in a quiet lounge area that overlooked the planet's horizon, where a shimmering ring of orbital platforms dotted the sky like silver crowns. She was alone, sipping a warm beverage that alien scientists had concocted to approximate Earth tea. The window's reflection showed a woman who had aged in the service of her people, lines of resolve etched upon her face. Outside, brilliant starfields reminded her of the immensity of the galaxy and the improbable journey of humanity. Ramirez appeared, carrying a small data tablet. News from Earth. The new orbital stations around Jupiter are complete. They're inviting a delegation from the Federation to see how we manage resource extraction without ravaging local environments. Ward inclined her head. That's good. Let the galaxy witness we have no intention of greedily hoarding it all. We just demand the courtesy of making decisions in our own solar system. Ramirez nodded, then paused. I've been reading messages from other newly empowered species. They're calling our stance a model for self-determination. Some have begun adopting Earth's infiltration methods, non-violent ways to secure influence, so they can't be exploited by bigger powers. It might get complicated if everyone tries to outmaneuver each other. Ward sighed. Yes, well, that's the nature of a shared galaxy, isn't it? Better we all remain vigilant and keep each other in check. At least we ended the old, lopsided Federation. Everything else is just the messy process of forging real cooperation. A hush fell, broken only by the faint hum of atmospheric regulators. Then Ramirez smiled. You realize we've changed the course of galactic civilization forever. Ward returned a faint grin. Edo. Hard to believe it all hinged on how long we were willing to pretend we were incompetent. Soon after, the Federation scheduled a major interspecies cultural festival to celebrate the second anniversary of the Jupiter Accords. Delegations arrived from all corners, the Fedar shimmering in prismatic crystal, the Midal floating in spheres of swirling color, the arthropodic Drari, who had grudgingly toned down their haughtiness, lesser-known species from across the Orion Arm, eager to showcase art and technology once overshadowed by founder pomp. Earth's pavilion stood proudly among them, featuring displays of humanity's varied cultures, music, dance, scientific achievements, and the triumphant story of forging peace through hidden cunning. The official narrative was softened to avoid too much embarrassment for the founders, but the subtext was unmistakable. You scorned us, we outplayed you, and now we build something better together. Ward roamed the festival, exchanging pleasantries with all manner of life forms. Many approached to offer gifts, perhaps a token of gratitude or an attempt to curry favor with the ascendant Earth. She accepted them with her well-practiced graciousness, while Johnson and Ramirez took mental notes on the possibilities for future alliances. In one corner, A group of small-bodied mammalian aliens performed a dance reminiscent of Earth's ancient tribal ceremonies. Ward was drawn to the spectacle, marveling at how the galaxy had grown more colorful and collaborative since the old guard had been dethroned. As the music swelled, an undercurrent of hope filled the air. When the performance ended, the chief dancer approached, eyes shining. Through a translator device, they said, "We are grateful you forced the Federation to see beyond the Founders. Now our dances can be shared freely, and our planet's resources are not seized without consent. We wish you continued strength, Ambassador." Ward nodded, feeling a warmth of satisfaction. "Thank you. We'll do our best." Back inside the main assembly hall, the final ceremony of the festival featured a reflection on how the Federation had evolved in these 2 years. Moderator Kaelrin delivered a heartfelt speech, praising the progress while cautioning that resentment still lurked among the old powers. He singled out Earth's improbable rise as proof that any species could contribute meaningfully if given genuine opportunity. When it was Ward's turn, she walked to the podium and took a deep breath. Gazing across the sea of alien faces, some friendly, others reserved, she recalled the countless humiliations that had once consumed her days here. She recalled the simmering anger in Johnson, the careful cunning of Huang Li, the calm patience of Ramirez, and the entire hidden workforce back on Earth. "We've traveled a difficult road," she began. "We endured your suspicion and your scorn. We tried, time and again, to integrate peacefully. Eventually, we realized that passivity would only reinforce the old injustices. And so we made a choice to stop playing by your rules and to create new ones that force equality rather than beg for it. What's happened since is not perfection, but it's a start. We see species that were once voiceless now contributing ideas, forging trade deals, collaborating on scientific advancements. We see a federation that, while still uncertain, is more balanced than it's ever been. And that came from a single pivot point, when humans decided we'd had enough of being dismissed as incompetent. Let us strive to avoid letting that dynamic repeat itself. Let's be humble enough to learn from smaller, younger, or simply different civilizations. Let us move forward knowing we share a galaxy that's richer when all can participate." The applause was thunderous from the lower tiers. Even some of the reformed founders offered hesitant taps or calls in support. Ward bowed and returned to her seat, heart pounding with the enormity of this journey. It was in that moment that she felt, for the first time, an honest sense of belonging, born not of invitation, but of rightful conquest by cunning means. Days after the festival, Earth's presence in the Federation's restructured committees became routine. The leftover hostility of certain founders still flared here and there, but with every passing month, the momentum of mutual cooperation gained steam. Younger generations among the Drari or Fedar grew curious, wanting to engage with humans on equal footing, free from the prejudices of their elders. Ward oversaw these transitions, acknowledging that the Federation would remain complex and fractious, but no longer immutably stacked against newcomers. She felt relieved that decades of subterfuge were behind them, replaced by open dialogues and collaboration. The illusions had served their purpose. Now, Earth's real voice was heard in every council that shaped the galaxy's destiny. On the approach to Earth's new flagship embassy, an elegant structure of glass and steel gracefully interwoven with living crystal from Fedar design, Ward paused to look up at the sky. The local star glowed a soft lavender hue, filtered by the planet's unique atmosphere. For a second, she pictured the swirling clouds of Jupiter in her home solar system, which had nearly been claimed by alien greed. She imagined the unstoppable might Earth had been prepared to unleash had the Federation resisted the new order. A calm sense of closure filled her. Humanity had proven it was not to be trifled with, yet had also demonstrated it could be reasoned with. That delicate balance between unstoppable force and genuine willingness to cooperate had toppled an empire of arrogance, making way for something new. Inside the embassy's main corridor, the old motto "Diplomacy at all costs" hung on a plaque slightly scuffed. Someone, perhaps an aide or a staff member,
had appended an extra line beneath in smaller letters. Until you push us too far. Ward stared at it for a moment, her lips curving in a subdued smile. She recalled the nights spent steeling herself for the final confrontation. The code words whispered into quantum communicators, the count of the seconds on that doomsday clock in the Federation Hall. It had been terrifying, exhilarating, necessary. The Federation had finally witnessed what happened when humans stopped being so unfailingly polite, and it had changed the course of interstellar civilization. "That's us," came Johnson's voice from behind her, reading the plaque. "Diplomatic until we're not." Ward tapped the plaque lightly. "We only used the force we needed. I'll stand by that decision forever." Johnson nodded. "Well, to think it started with a handful of outdated tech they were practically throwing at us. Now we've reverse-engineered half their systems. Life is funny." Ward's laughter was soft but genuine. "You know, if they just let us participate fairly from day one, we'd never have gone to all this trouble. It was their own arrogance that gifted us the perfect camouflage." They walked side by side down the corridor, passing staff members who offered respectful nods. In the background, transmissions from across the galaxy buzzed with the daily workings of the Reformed Federation. Some disputes remained, some friction endured, but the climate was unmistakably more open than the old days. At last, they reached a set of tall doors leading to the new council chamber that Earth had built for direct negotiations with any species that sought genuine partnership. The doors slid open, revealing delegates from various corners of the galaxy waiting to talk trade, technology, and alliances. Among them were representatives of species that had once quietly despised humanity but now recognized the new balance of power. Their eyes revealed caution, but also a glimmer of respect. Ward straightened her coat, offering Johnson a parting glance. "Let's see what the galaxy wants from us today." As they stepped into the room, the conversations hushed momentarily, all eyes turning to the humans who had shattered millennia of hierarchical tradition. For a heartbeat, the old memory of scorn flashed through Ward's mind. But that was past. Now, the Federation recognized Earth as a formidable equal not by their grace, but by Earth's own unwavering resolve. She smiled graciously. "Good afternoon, everyone. Shall we begin?" In the months and years that followed, historians would note that humanity's unveiling of its hidden hand had done more than restructure the Federation. It had spurred cross-pollination of technologies, sparked unprecedented diplomatic efforts among previously sidelined species, and shattered illusions of guaranteed superiority for the founding powers. While a small portion of the Federation never forgave humans for the audacity of that single day of reckoning, the majority understood that a fundamental evolution had taken root. Gradually, new treaties and charters replaced the centuries-old restrictions. Planets once exploited gained voices. Alliances formed across species lines that had long been overshadowed by founder egos. For Earth, it was vindication. At last, the planet that had once been derided as a near-barbaric backwater now guided the shape of the Federation's future. The hidden fleets in the asteroid belts, the gravitational platforms disguised as harmless rocks, the quantum infiltration codes embedded in every system. These were the silent guardians ensuring that the Federation adhered to its new, more equitable path. Because humanity had discovered that real diplomacy was more than polite gestures. It was the power to enforce fairness when everyone else refused to do so. And so, every day, Earth contributed to the Federation wholeheartedly, not as a vassal or a supplicant, but as an architect of a galactic order that valued every voice. Humans might still be impulsive, emotional, and prone to internal strife, but they had proven one critical lesson. Behind courtesy and compromise lay a core of steel. The Federation had learned that truth the hard way. And in the wake of that lesson, an era of uneasy but genuine cooperation began. No one could predict the distant future. Perhaps, decades hence, another species would emerge, challenging Earth's position in a dramatic reversal. Perhaps the old founders would attempt one last insurrection. But for now, in the shimmering corridors of the Federation's administrative complex,
An undeniable sense of change pulsated through the air. Delegates from across the spiral arms engaged with each other on more level terms. Resources were allocated with an eye toward mutual benefit. Scientific breakthroughs flowed openly between worlds that once hoarded knowledge behind thick veils of bureaucracy. Sometimes, in the hush of a long evening, after countless negotiations, Ambassador Ward would recall the wide-eyed fear on the day she revealed protocol enough already. She remembered the hush as guns floated overhead and starships went dark in the vacuum of space. Above all, she remembered the raw relief in finally exposing Earth's hidden strength. For so many years, humanity had walked on eggshells, desperate to hide the extent of its infiltration. That night of revelation, Earth had collectively exhaled, and the Federation had inhaled a sharp breath of shock, followed by a cold wave of realization. The so-called primitives had outplayed them. Since then, the galaxy had not been the same. Standing on a balcony, gazing at the starfields beyond, Ward allowed herself a final, private smile. When the Alien Federation finally witnessed what happens when humans stop being so freaking diplomatic, they learned a lesson that would echo for centuries. Never underestimate the quiet ones, because behind their measured words and polite bows, they just might be rewriting the entire playbook. And, in the end, that rewriting was precisely what had saved the Federation from itself.